I'm a little more aggressive, especially on my consumer trials, because you often just know there's just never going to pay enough money voluntarily. I get that a lot on those cases, not so much on PI, but on the consumer side. So, we I think we did the Garcia trial prep with you. It might have even been 120 days out, just because we were so certain that it was going. So, but yeah, that timing is important, and you really have to think that through so that you make sure you have enough time after you've had this good school session with Elizabeth, uh, to get the most out of that process. So
Yeah.
it's great to get you focused on where your eyes need to be on the good and the bad in your case.
I don't think you really, especially if you're running an opening, you really kind of learn the sequencing of like where to put things. We generally always have an opening template that we're using. And that's great. We should do that. But sometimes it's like, oh, we need to educate before we get there. And I think that that is so important. And we learned one of those, the takeaways from the Garcia case prep
Yeah.
where we did back to back, right? So we in it to win it. Did a morning session and an afternoon session, which is great if you don't have a ton of time, or rather, and I think in your position, and you can probably explain this, Nick, like you really wanted to get the information and be able to marinate versus spreading it out. Um,
Right. Yeah. So, when we did Garcia, you're right. We did two sessions. And, one session in particular, the morning session, we really were trying to attack perceived weaknesses, things that we felt were troublesome, and see how that diminished the response, because we had really outlandish facts of how our clients were treated. And we knew, based on the positive, sort of sky's the limit scenario, but we wanted to think about what was going to cause us the most trouble, right? And then we wanted to test sort of that AB group, come back with a second group and sort of test strategies on diffusing the trouble spots. And it was a very successful, perspective. And as we were able to resolve that case successfully on about the third day of trial. But it was guys, when I tell you Elizabeth's great at this, we have really good lawyers. Wells Fargo can afford the best lawyers in the world, but I think Elizabeth actually did a better job arguing their position than they did with an unlimited budget to spend as much time as they wanted. She really was very good at poking into the weak spots and trying to turn the temperature down where it otherwise would have been an inferno in our favor. And I think the way the focus groups reacted prepared me for what I saw when some of the negatives started to pop up, in the trial itself. We were able to precondition some things and try to deal with them ahead of time. We sort of used the things that Elizabeth helped us focus in on to disarm those defenses as much as we could. And then, of course, we were able to anticipate, based on reactions observed during the trial and what we had seen with the focus groups. I was able to talk more confidently with the clients about, how this might impact outcomes, as we get into 2 or 3 days and some of that negative percolates a little bit. We were able to talk about, with them, pros and cons more clearly about why it might make sense to resolve the case while those questions are in the air. Um, and it ended up being a very successful outcome. The clients were super satisfied, but we had a lot more clarity walking into, the lion's den, so to speak, than if we had gone and done, the thing without having had spent the time that we did with Elizabeth and her group. So,
Yeah, one of my favorite things is writing the defense side, the opposing counsel side, because people, I mean, I get it. You get so far deep into a case, it's really hard to craft the other side. And the benefit that I have is I've been through 1,000 focus groups, in person, virtual, mock, you name it, to over 1,000. I can tell you pretty soundly what some of those what some of
right.
those rat jurors are going to say. So it's pretty easy for me to come in and create a pretty solid, defense opening statement and then, questions. And I think one of the things too that was, I get a lot of questions about this. And I think that Nick, you did a great job preparing, which was you wanted to ask for a really large number, but you really wanted to test the calculation, like how you wanted to calculate that. And I think
Right.
so many people, not that they wing it, but there are there's just a lot of going around asking for that large number. And so I thought, your idea of coming in and us, opening statement and having discussion and then, but leaving some time for you to be able to kind of talk them through and walk them through and then just ask questions about the calculation. And I think that that's a great way of really helping give like some certainty to your number, like how to do it and like getting some feedback and getting them kind of involved in helping you.
Yeah, that was for people who don't really know where we were with that case. What we were anticipating was if that case went to a verdict, it had the potential on the punitive side to have a B at the end of it because Wells Fargo is so big and it was so outrageous. So what we wanted to do was try to figure out how to get the maximum possible compensatory award. So we had several thoughts about how to talk that up and how to explain it in a way that was defensible, given the enormity of the impact on our folks' lives. I mean, it essentially had been devastating to them for more than almost 15 years at the point of trial. Really had just lost, their 40s and into their early 50s with this problem. And those are critical years for a family, right? A couple trying to move through normal financial principles where they've got kids getting to adulthood and college, and they're thinking about, hey, I'd like to retire one day. They just lost all that. Their life was just blitzed by this whole scenario. And so we were trying to figure out how to get the compensatory numbers up. And by doing the work with Elizabeth, we were able to try to explain a theory that we thought had a lot of potential merit, and then of course see how the jury reacted to it. And it was interesting because we spent a lot of time ruminating over it, and we thought we had really good ideas, but it was not. It didn't. The testing turned out that it was a little bit confusing. And so it kind of sent us back to the drawing board, where otherwise we would have been thinking, oh, we're so smart. But by being able to test that, that was a very important piece.